If this rolls heads, the B-roll for the entire video has to be the dorm from Girls Frontline 2. Shit! I love women. That's not controversial to say nowadays, is it? We live in a bizarre time where character designs and sex appeal is the most extreme balancing act, as restraining yourself too much with attractive designs will draw one extremist crowd, and being far too loose with it attracts a completely different group. At least one of these groups is actually going to buy and play the games they want their way. Am I right, fellas? Though looking at the gacha space, these two sides are mostly absent, and we are left with a completely different discussion. Is this a Gooner game? So in this video, I want to explore the term Gooner and see if it's a tangible form of critique, or if it's just an excuse to reject everyone's most primal instincts in favor of actually playing a video game? What do you people take me for? The polling doesn't stop once I get Zhu Yuan on my account. That's just where it gets started. Using a premium currency earned via slow accumulation over time, or spending money to then pull for new characters, is a primary motivator for most people to stick around with a gacha game, and is the main source of income for these games in almost all cases. Though oftentimes, it's not just their value in performance or even placement in meta alone that is a driving force. Every single character, in one way or another, carries with them an artistic design and aesthetic that speaks to everyone on a different level of appeal. This appeal can be so strong to where it can be the primary reason someone wants to pull a character. Meta be damned in some cases. Sexualization just so happens to be one avenue of approach that's taken quite often. As the saying goes, sex sells, and the market value of an attractive character is multiplied greatly in due part to the parasocial environment gacha games cultivate in their audiences. I mean, just look at the old Coca-Cola commercials. Your choice was women or polar bears. Damn, furries had representation this far back? Beyond the design itself, a character can also be sexualized through the use of deliberate camera angles, exaggerative animations, wish-fulfilling character writing, questionable sound effects, and even some full-blown game modes that skip the subtlety and just really want you to pop that can of cherry Sprite you've been shaking up for 8 minutes now. They may have called me a gooner, but riddle me this. Why have they never called me wrong? Huh? But what happens when sexualization breaks an abstract threshold of acceptability in the general public's eye? How do they respond back? Gooner is a more recently adopted phrase referring to an individual addicted to sexual or sexualized content, and quite frankly, it fits the bill rather well for a description of the games and players in question. These games aren't being subtle with their implementations of sexual content, not even close, and the players just eat it right up. No, not the food, the tits on the screen, you simpletons. Interestingly enough, I've rarely ever seen individuals who are labeled as Gooners to ever really get worked up at the use of the label. They're quite accepting of the fact that they are indeed heavily influenced into playing a game for its sexual content. With that being said, it's something of a different story when the label is used as a form of critique for the games themselves, their inherent worth, and if they should be played or not. The short answer is yes, of course. Everyone's personal value judgment of a game can be influenced by the use of sexual content. The primary reason for this is that hypersexualization can oftentimes be distracting, unappealing, uncomfortable, unnecessary, or even immersion breaking in a video game. Everyone has a different level of personal comfort with sexuality and how open they are with it. If a scantily clad woman is placed in a scene where everyone else is fully clothed, as the camera angles are not trying to hide the fact that it wants you to focus more on the female anatomy than the story they're trying to tell, it can take players out of the experience. As for extreme cases, I'm sure we are all familiar with the sex scene in The Last of Us Part 2 and how put off people were by it. Now imagine how the anime game that just wants to jork you without an explanation makes people feel. Games like Genshin Impact, Honkai Star Rail, and Wuthering Waves opt for just having attractive characters with some pronounced cleavage, a lot of leg action, and jiggle physics that real women would probably hate dealing with if that's how breasts actually worked. On the other end of the spectrum, we have games like Love in Deep Space and Snowbreak Containment Zone, that would just rather you forget it's a video game, so all they'd have to do every 6 weeks is introduce more soft pornographic scenes. When I played this game for a month, this was one of the pieces of major content in an event. It's just buckshot roulette, but less fun, and the tits aren't even worth it. Then we've got the games that dance on that undefined line, like Zenless Zone Zero and Girls Frontline 2. Games that show restraint at times with their sexualization in some areas of core gameplay, but then lean further into it in other areas. From my observations in this space, it is generally agreed that games like Lads and Snowbreak are not trying to hide it, and the label is generally accepted in the communities. Games like ZZZ and GFL2, however, it's somewhat complicated as the games don't completely fall in one camp or the other. Yet that doesn't stop people on one side to definitively declare it's a Gooner game, and the other side may attempt to convince people otherwise. In the case of ZZZ, it is likely due in part to the simplicity of the game's combat system, often being referred to as a one-button mashing game, creating a narrative where the gameplay takes a back seat and the players are primarily there for the attractive characters. As for Girls Frontline 2, in my opinion, it is two things: the niche genre and the game's marketing. As a turn-based strategy game, its target audience is quite small, coupled with the fact that the game's difficulty, as of right now, is hardly felt and can oftentimes be auto-battled to victory, leaving the discussion of its hardcore appeal absent almost completely. At that same time, the game's dorm room feature left quite an impression on players when they were first exposed to it, likely on social media. I'm sure we've all heard the joke comment of, quote, "GFL2 has gameplay? I thought it was just a dorm sim," or something along those lines. I realize my B-roll in this video isn't helping my case, but don't look at me. I'm just the guy who lost the coin flip. I have no real issue with someone choosing not to play a game that is hyper-sexualized. However, there are times I wished people were willing to set their first impressions aside and give these titles a shot and let the gameplay get a chance to speak for itself. There are many games I've personally played and enjoyed that I thought I wouldn't have, and all it took was for me to get my foot in the door. With that being said, you can't, nor shouldn't, be forcing people to play games they may not feel comfortable with. It is just something that they need to take the first step with themselves. Encourage or even sell them on it whenever you can, but do not throw it on them. And with that, I have said all I really wanted to about the topic of Gooners and Goonerbait in gacha games. Now get out of here, I'm a very busy man and the tension isn't going to relieve itself. I'm clocking out now.